Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the sixth episode of Loops 3.0. The episode of today is called New Approaches for Future-Oriented Industries. And for those who are not familiar yet with what Loops is a webinar organized by us, Velta. My name is Mattia Bosoni, and usually we present projects in the topic of circular economy as a broad topic with speakers that can be project coordinators or other project members. They will present their projects, and afterwards there will be a discussion with questions and discussion brainstorming about the topic. Today, I want to give a very warm welcome to two projects. The first one is TULIPS. TULIPS is a consortium developing innovation to facilitate the transition towards low carbon mobility at airports. At the moment, Amsterdam Schiphol is the, let's say, proving ground of this project, where 17 demonstrator projects are taking place. The main goal is to contribute to the zero emissions in the sector of waste also by 2030 and being climate neutral by 2050. The presenter of today for the TULIPS project will be Anne Rademacher. Welcome, Anne. And Karsten Huhing. They are respectively VP6 and VP12 leader of the project. Then we have the second project, RaRe2. RaRe2 is a project that focuses on smart connection for sustainable and digitalized manufacturing solutions. The global goal of RaRe2 is to create an ecosystem platform where European organizations in the sector can cooperate and reach together sustainable value chain in the sector of manufacturing. Both projects are part of the European Union. They are funded or co-funded by the European Union, precisely TULIPS by Horizon 2020 and RaRe2 by Horizon Europe. Now let's go to the interesting part. Let's start with the presentation of the project. We will initiate with TULIPS. So again, welcome Karsten Huhing. He will start the presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mattia. I trust you can see the screen by now. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the kind introduction and also for inviting us to the Loops 3.0 webinars and the sixth series on new approaches for future-oriented industries. The industry that Anna and myself would like to talk about today is the aviation industry, and there particularly the area of airports. Now, before we start speaking about the TULIPS project, I would like to sensibilize your view on airports and how we actually see them. For the most of us, airports are actually functional points. They are places which we can, use to get from one destination to another. They enable us for long distance travel, and with this, they have tremendous socio-economic benefits. It's not only for leisure flight or business flights across the globe in a short distance, but also it's areas where we employ a lot of people either in the airlines or at the airports, and then also the transport sector that leads from and to the airport, and furthermore the business districts which are located in the ultimate vicinity of airports, being able to do international business from those points. Unfortunately, or well, I would say unfortunately, at the same time, these socio-economic benefits that we see from airports come at environmental costs. Airports produce emissions through their consumption of any type of energy, be it fuel or electricity. They produce noise in the environment and ultrafine particles, but they also produce traffic and waste. And we have developed a habit by which we accept these environmental costs over the socioeconomic benefits, which have become very important and and integrated into our network of transportation, even for types like air cargo, which is naturally quicker than other modes of transport, at least for long distance journeys. Um, the issue with this is that usually the people that bear the environmental costs are not necessarily the ones that are benefiting from the socioeconomic benefits that aviation produces. So we're in a situation where some people fly, but all people pay for it because there's only one atmosphere. And the same is true for pollution and waste and so forth. So what the European Commission wants under the Green Deal is a scenario where we sustain the economic benefits that we have from the aviation industry whilst drastically reducing the environmental costs. And this is no less than changing our view of airports from functional points of airports which are functional and environmentally friendly at the same time. And this is the concept of green airports. This so much for the theory. The question now is only how. And in order to answer that question, the aviation sector is engaging at multiple levels to satisfy the EU green transition paradigm, which is mostly spearheaded by the European Green Deal, that wants to become by which we want to become a climate neutral continent by 2050, and we want to drastically reduce the emissions in the transport sector and also waste from the transport sector by 2030 and 2050 respectively for different, let's say, targets, to different amounts. Directly under the Green Deal are funded three projects, amongst which is TULIPS, Stargates, and the Olga project, to achieve this goal. And indirectly through smart airports, we have the Alight project, spearheaded by the Airport of Copenhagen, and hydrogen-powered aviation, which have two new projects mainly looking at liquid hydrogen use at airports for hydrogen flight. Together, as a cluster, we want to achieve sustainable airport operation and zero-emission flight by 2050 latest. As for the TULIPS project, we have 32 partners spread about 11 member states, and within it, we have four operational partners from airports, which join scientists and technology and developers to give a distinct answer as to how we are going to reduce the environmental impact, the externality, so to say, and at the same time preserve the socioeconomic benefits. So the main objectives, as Matti said in the beginning already, is we want to accelerate the emission reduction and the efficient resource use at airports until 2030 and 2050. We want to demonstrate, measure, and prescribe innovative technologies and concepts that can help to support the ongoing transition towards sustainable airport operations, which I explained as green airports. And then, of course, the key element of the project will be the development of sustainability roadmaps based on the evidence that we gained from seven focus areas and a total of 17 demonstrations. So the ultimate outcome would be roadmaps to zero waste and zero emission airports in 2030 and net zero aviation emissions in 2050. Now, don't be fooled. This is nothing that TULIPS itself develops. Airports are on that transition already. Only it sits at a very vague position that they want to do things and they want to reduce emissions from particular airport operations. The question is just now which technologies to use for that, and this is what TULIP basically does. So we have identified 7 focus areas, which should become the focus areas that each and every airport is looking into. And within those focus areas, TULIPS has defined 17 real-life demonstrations, which could then be used as building blocks that individual airport strategies can use or implement to complete their roadmap. Those 7 focus areas start with the sustainable intermodal transport connections to airports. As you know, airports trigger movements of any type of mobility, be it passengers or commuters that work at the airport, or even the cargo that needs to be transported from and to the airport. And this is why airports are responsible for those. So within Tulips, we ask ourselves the questions: how can we eliminate the emissions from passengers, commuters, and cargo? That needs to be, organized for people to come and go from the airport to the airport. So it's really the question of how can people invest into sustainable airport connections without disrupting the airport throughput. We need informed strategies for these decisions because you can only invest money once and it needs to be the one with impact. So we are developing a modeling tool in Tulips that help us to use a base scenario of how the airport mobility will develop based from 2019 up until 2030 if we don't do anything. And then we have 5 intervention scenarios that help us to describe what the impact will be if we do particular changes. So informed investment will be possible. Also, the use of a commuters and passengers app that provides better choices of how to get to the airport with less emissions. And then, of course, the change of technology in trucking. We are testing 3 40-ton electric trucks in the forwarding business, which means short distance transports of air cargo from and to the airport, and how the current process is being impacted. Another focus area is the energy supply of future aircraft. There, we ask the questions of what airports need to prepare for in terms of electric and hydrogen flight. So we are actively testing modular charging that adapts to the plane that needs to be charged, unattended charging, procedures including all licenses and procedures, and then of course the hydrogen fueling infrastructure and processes. Work package 3, a tremendously interesting one, is how can we ensure that airports adjust their energy mix without disrupting the actual airport operations. Airports are complex energy systems, and you cannot just replace your energy mix without increasing the risk of failures. So at the core of this sits so-called integrated energy systems. Airports are now energy consumers. In the future, they will be energy producers and consumers at the same time. So we need to think from like a single energy carrier to a coordinated utilization of multiple energy carriers, which can include solar power, wind power, methane, biogas, these sort of things, and then create smart grids at the airport, which can store and distribute energy in an intelligent way to have sustainable energy available at the airport. For this, we are testing iron flow batteries, the smart grid, and hydrogen energy storage as well. The next one is zero emission airside operations. How can we decarbonize the activities or ground operations at airports? This is really important because I need you to imagine that at larger airports, we have 900 to 1,100 flight movements per day. Every time an airplane lands and departs, there is vehicles coming to it for different reasons: baggage, ground power supply, fueling, food. And these movements accumulate to quite a lot of emissions. Decarbonizing them is an important thing. We are looking at hydrogen-powered tow truckers and ground power units, which are the most emission-rich ones, but also the hydrogen fueling process and the guidelines that we develop for people to implement these technologies faster. In Work Package 5, we're looking at the role of airports in upscaling sustainable aviation fuel, which is so far the most promising tool to decarbonize the actual flown path. But there's questions about the infrastructure and maintenance, the link to the production side from the airports, clearinghouse, basically meaning how to integrate players into the market that are not commonly fuel suppliers in order to get them up and running, and licenses and these sort of things. And then also the demand side. How can airports increase the demand for stuff by their communication to passengers? Then work package 7, that would be to improve the ultimate, the nearest environment of the airport, conditions around the airport, basically by reducing or mitigating ultrafine particles and measuring those, and the use of land for carbon sequestration. Airports have a lot of land which has little aeronautical use, and so far it just sits there and it's not being used for neither energy production or to absorb carbon in the soil and even use it for agriculture. So these sort of tests are going on in work package 7. Finally, we have the cluster, the work package on circular airports. This is what we want to talk to you about today. I'm not going to give away much about the trials that we're doing at this present, because this is essentially what Anna will be speaking about. The question is just, why do circular economy matter to airports? And then I would like to bring it back to a quick introduction of how airports actually operate. Now, you must see airports as fixed cost business. They sustain their business because of throughput from cargo and passengers. The more throughput they have, the more profitable they are. Unfortunately, there is a direct link between the throughput and emissions and waste. If we don't do anything to mitigate, an increase in throughput and growth will increase in emissions and waste. So the idea of this is to understand, if we add circularity to airports, how can we use this circularity to reduce emissions and waste, whereof there is a perspective of growth in the future? And the idea is to maintain the throughput and cargo passengers at their convenience, but still reduce the emission and waste that they produce in airports. And with this, I would like to hand over to Anna to give us an understanding of how we measure also these type of circularity impacts on emissions and waste.
Great introduction, Karsten. So thank you. And exactly what you're saying, the importance of circularity at airports is what also makes being a work package leader of 6 of TULIPS very dynamic and interesting role. And this slide, what you're currently looking at, is actually summarizing the work that we are doing during the course of TULIPS. So what we have done in a nutshell is we have split it up, kind of like operational resource streams and constructional resource streams. And simply because there are different approaches that we want to test out and pilot and demonstrate at different airports that are also collaborating within TULIPS. And that's also, I think, one of the benefits. What you see is once we try out something, for instance, at Schiphol Airport, we're going to do actually the same or slightly different approach at Oslo Airport, for instance, or Cyprus Airport. And then you can also see like sometimes things work, or there are cultural differences or other things like the size of the airport, and that matters actually, and that also kind of like influence the outcome. And before we kind of like started deep diving into hey, what can we do to change it, and indeed reducing or better preventing waste at airports, we started with making a really like a baseline study to look at what are we talking about, what is the type of volumes that typically arise at airports, and also what are ways to monitor it, and to also kind of like introduce monitoring frameworks to more directly manage those kind of streams, which also meant that we needed to engage with a lot of different stakeholders, because as you can imagine, being probably at an airport once before, you might have seen that there are different actors operating there, like restaurants, shops, those kind of things, but also the facilities, the cleaning organizations that are there, and everyone arranging the cargo, for instance, for the flights and whatnot. So there are a lot of people, vehicles, materials, products flowing through an airport. And of course, the question is, where is that generating any type of waste? And if so, what is then done with it? And I think that was one of the key questions that we answered in the beginning, like what is actually typically done with waste? And we saw some very interesting approaches of different waste handlers, of course, at airports, which are also summarized in a baseline study. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But also you see here that we are talking about effective nudging strategies. And this is where TU Delft, Dutch University, comes into place with their behavioral science department, where also they are typically observing passengers or other stakeholders in the airport environment and see how do they act and behave around bins, or maybe with also different setups, like for instance, a reusable coffee cup, they're currently testing at Oslo Airport a dishwasher as a service concept, if that could work. And that's the fun part, like just trying out, see if it works, and if it works, scaling to other airports. If you then look at construction loop on the right-hand side, this is typically interesting because construction materials are known as high impact materials, big emissions. And at airports, there are always a lot of construction projects ongoing. So the potential for reusing materials here is really high. However, there are operational challenges that mostly airports face with, for instance, space. So thinking about reusing a material also means that after demolition, it needs to be stored somewhere before it can be reused in another project. And that storing is one of the challenges because the ground is typically quite expensive, and storing them might not really, especially for a longer time, make the business case financially interesting to reuse materials. So what we are doing is we're also measuring the environmental impact of reusing such materials, so that we also show like, look, you prevent buying something new, which of course saves you money. You lower your emissions by reusing different type of materials, and hopefully that kind of like adds up in the end towards the ongoing costs of, for instance, storage, but also thinking about careful demolition, which is really a change in the current way of working. So how we do it, and that's I think also one of the more tech-driven solutions, is that we're using different type of tags, both active and passive, to follow those construction materials in the airport environment. We are linking those tags to a product passport, which is then constantly also updating the geographical location of such an asset, which means that with that data, we can prove the reuse, but also in that data passport, we can kind of like figure out what kind of data is typically available from a material. So as you might know, EU is also putting into force Eco-Design Directive, where also digital product passports will play a big role. And even though batteries, for instance, are first on the roll to be implemented, construction sector is on the list. So in the upcoming years, we will see that product passports for construction materials will play a much more important role. So already having the pilot now, looking at, hey, what type of data is available and how can we use it to facilitate that reuse is pretty interesting. So going to a few more slides with also some hyperlinks for more information. So on the next slide here, you see our baseline study, the one that we actually did for operational streams. This is one study that we also deemed relevant to publish academically. Also because the methodology was quite new on how to do it, and we could do it at different airports. And this methodology actually seemed pretty feasible to perform no matter the size of an airport. So with the hyperlink, you can also get access to that article and read more about it. But as mentioned, with knowing the baseline, we also start creating a monitoring framework, not only within the scope of TULIPS, where the main target is reducing waste, but more towards also the zero waste ambitions that airports have, and also, of course, in line with many EU action plans towards 2050 circular economy. So for this matter, and also the involvement, for instance, of the different stakeholders. We created also many templates, which are all open, publicly available. And with all the information collected over time as well, we launched as well a Zero Waste Airport website, which you can also access in the next slide, where you see the QR code for that website as well. And on the website, you also see, apart from various initiatives for various streams like plastics, paper, food, which are all the most important, let's say, most impactful streams at airports. You also can select on the different circular strategies, like whether you are interested in recycling food waste or more towards preventing food waste. So you can be inspired, so to say, to try out different things. And in this website, you see this one header, which is called Tools and Resources. So talking about monitoring frameworks, stakeholder involvement, all those kind of templates and tools are available for any airport to also use and leverage on. Then, last but not least, the resources, the constructional resources part. So I've already introduced what we are exactly doing here, but this is a summary again of going from the resource passports to tracking and tracing. Now with the purpose of reusing waste, but our objective is also to really go towards preventive maintenance. And if every asset in an airport is identified and the status can be controlled, it may be much easier to look at, hey, where can we actually either do preventive maintenance or already think upfront on when some renovation needs to take place and where to get those materials from. So much more forecasting, together linked with, of course, always assessing financial and environmental impact of such materials. And using the Access Material Exchange platform, we are also able to match materials. So currently we have created local marketplaces for that. And the progress so far is pretty good. So we are really excited about that. This was it for now.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you very much, Karsten. It was an amazing presentation, very clear. I really like the way how you went through each work package, and also the dive in the last aspects, which will also be discussed later. So now I would like to give the floor to the other project, RaRe2. I want to give a warm welcome to Anas Ben Akur, the project coordinator, and also his colleague Adrian. By the way, this is for the audience. If you look in the chat, you will see that Adrian Jacob shared a link. It is a survey about the project. So feel free and welcome to go through it. Now, welcome again, Anas. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you that you invited us to present our project here today in the Loop 3.0 for new approaches for the future-oriented industries. I guess this title fits quite well to our approach. So RaRe2 stands for Human-Centered Rapid Reconfiguration of Production and Value Chain in fast-changing scenarios. And so I wanted to present the following agenda today. First of all, of course, the introduction into the project. Then I want to introduce some of our use case partners. And of course, for the today's topic, what is the impact of material exchange and how can digital twins help us with this issue? And then in the end, of course, the Q&A session for some more questions. Let's start with a short introduction into our project. So basically, we are a huge project with 22 beneficiaries. So it's split it up in different research and technology organizations and some smaller and medium-sized enterprises and some larger enterprises. And the total project duration is 42 months, and we are at the moment at month 19. So this means we are still in the first half of the project. But in the end, we have some more results already achieved. So let's talk about what's the aim of our project. So yeah, in the introduction, you already have heard that we are planning to develop a holistic ecosystem platform, which enables, in the end, reconfiguration of the production system. And our approach is called the Green Wave enablement. So this means what we are going to do is, of course, first of all, you need to detect an upcoming issue which influences your production system. So this means you need a system which gives you an alert that there is an upcoming issue. And then as a decision maker, you have to think about, okay, what's the best option to react on it? And basically, at the moment, a lot of decision makers do it by gut feeling and not data or fact based. And we are planning to develop some yeah, tools, digital tools, which help to get a better inside view, which is data driven, and to come to better decisions in the end. So this means if there's an upcoming issue in the value chain or inside of the production system, you can simulate some new potential routes through your production system, or you can check whether you can yeah, get to another sector or produce some other parts. Or in the end, of course, you need to think about if I'm able to implement the changes in the end. So of course, and this is the human-centered aspect, you need to take the employees and all partners and workers into account. So how do we plan to implement that? So basically, I'm not presenting you today the work packages. I will try to transport the vision of our project via our strategic objectives. So this means, as I already said, the first part which we want to achieve is an AI-based early detection tool. This means you need to include some internal data from your production system, but of course you need to include or in high important external data sources as well. And yeah, for this we have posted a link in the chat and the comment on LinkedIn, and we would be quite gladful if you could share your perspective of some possible external data which could be included for such issues. This would help us, of course, to get some more external views on that specific topic. So let's get on for the second step. So as I said, the decision maker is in the center. So this means there is an alert because natural disaster or political crisis or some material shortages, which is the topic of today. And then the decision maker needs to check, okay, what are my possibilities? And for this, he's able to use some system level digital twins which already connects internal data and external data as well, and which are focused on processes, on process chains, intralogistics, and some other aspects like economic and ecological aspects. And then you can do a simulation and you can get into the decision support tool, which is kind of a dashboard where you have the all information included, which could be a good option to react on this disturbance. And then in the end, there's the implementation phase, which is on the right side of this picture, where you check, okay, do I have all the skills I need for the implementation in the end, or does my employees have the skills? And if not, what do I have to do to train, to upskill, to be possible to get into the ramp-up phase fastly? And we are planning to demonstrate all of those developments in a total of in 4 use case partners. I will introduce them later on. And in the end, afterwards, because you're not isolated on an island, you're included in a network and an ecosystem, European manufacturing ecosystem. For that reason, we have to start with co-creating with the whole value chain and some other external stakeholders. So let's come to our use case partners. Just in a nutshell, our first demonstrator, our first use case partner is the MMM HCI, which is a producer and rental service for mobile departments of processing of sterilized goods for hospitals. So this means if the hospital needs to renovate their facilities, then you can rent easily such a department. It is installed in front of the building of the hospital, and you can sterilize all the medical instruments in this building then. So it's a turnkey solution. You just need to lock or keep the space free for the department, and then it all will be delivered, installed, and you're ready to go. Our second use case partner is out of the automotive sector. It's the Fontana Group. They are focusing on the production of luxury and sport car parts, as well as engineering services and the production of forming tools. And they have a lot of expertise in processing aluminum material. Our third use case partner, it's called Kavala. They're a producer of car child seats, strollers, and some spare parts for such applications. So they're processing carbon reinforced plastics, which is a quite difficult process in the end because you have some high safety standards, but I will talk about it later on. And our last demonstrator is called Manicon, and he's a producer, or this company is a producer for contact lenses, prescribed contact lenses. So this means each single part is a special and patient individual part. So let's have an inside view of what I already said, sector transitioning, and what could be relevant if I want to react on crisis. And of course, all of you know some industry sectors have to fit or stick to some standards, and it's not quite easy to change into another sector easily because you have to do long certification processes and things like that. So the reaction on such disturbances they are quite limited. For this reason, we need to focus, or we need to motivate all the political persons to bring in some ideas for such fast track certification, things like that, and some more intersectoral standards to be able to strengthen the resilience and to enable manufacturers to react on some specific needs or some disturbances in an adequate way. But let's come to today's topic. So what's the actual impact if I have to exchange my material? So let's keep it practical. 3 of our 4 use case partners are involved by such issues. And I want to show you, especially on Kavala use case later on, how this material exchange impacts your manufacturing and processes. But in general speaking, so if I change the material, of course, I will have changes in the accuracy. So for example, when we are talking about the contact lenses, we are talking about a nanoscale precision. So if I change the material, I'm out of the tolerance really, really fast, and I produce scrap, and nobody wants to do this. Then, of course, you have the safety issues. For example, the Kavala use case, if you change the material, you change the mechanical characteristics, and with that, your risk that you don't match the safety standards anymore. And then, of course, you have the process capability, which is something really special for aluminum processing. So this means if you change the aluminum part, you have a high risk to produce scrap because of aesthetic aspects and things like that. So let's keep it practical and let's check how digital twins could help for such issues. So let's take the Kavala use case in that amount. And if you have some idea of how it works with processing reinforced plastics, of course, there's the first thing you have to do. You have to gather some material data, and to do this, I have shown you here. There's a lot of tests to do, physical tests, cost-intensive tests. To get the material data and to, in the end, simulate the structure in structural modeling or the processes. And all is belonging to the material data. And if there is a change in material data or a change in the recipe, for example, you take a higher amount of recycled materials, then of course you have changes in the characteristics, and you need to first check if it works for your part anymore or not. And for this reason, digital twins could help to accelerate such processes and to avoid such a large amount of testings. And if you then early detect some shortages of material, you can easily use the digital tools to prepare some solutions and to prepare them in a faster way, and to be prepared in the end to change of the material without and stop of the production. This is quite important. So you can directly take or exchange to a new material and produce further. And you can even lift up or increase the amount of recycled material to overcome such shortages of primary material, for example. And then you can get a better balanced timeline for changes in the end. And that's pretty much I wanted to present you for today. We are a little bit over the time, but I think now we can get into the Q&A sessions for both of the projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hannes, for your presentation. Also very interesting. And indeed, we now can go through some questions, some discussions to dive in certain aspects. And I think particularly I would like to start with you. And I would like to ask you if you can elaborate a bit more on the exchange of product data between the companies that can enjoy the stakeholder platform, and also if you have something to say about the facilitation and the efficiency in material exchange.
Yeah. Let's get up the. Could you share the slides again, please? I have some visual material for that. So when we are talking about the material exchange, you have different stakeholders to connect and to bring them onto the platform. So this means, for instance, the manufacturing companies, of course, some other partners or external stakeholders, and you need to include as well the research and technology organizations, sometimes some consultancy firms, because they have some expert knowledge, which you can get advantage of. But in the end, when you want to exchange material data, for example, or exchange materials directly, you have always the hard question about the ownership. So it's always about open source versus paywall, which means no one wants to give away his expert knowledge for free. Especially such material data, such material data cards, where you have to do a lot of cost-intensive testing. This is something where you should get smart solution how they how some stakeholders can make out some business models of it. So in the end, they want to, as I said, don't want to give it away for free. They want to have a benefit of it. And for this reason, yeah, some such platforms should think about this as well. Then, of course, the security standards are something relevant. If you have an open source platform or if you have even a paywall platform, you need to even take care that you don't have the unlimited transfer of knowledge, and you don't want to have some unfair advantage for some external stakeholders out of European countries, which could take over such platforms as well. And you have to avoid, of course, the misuse in the end. And then what I already said in some slides before, the thing about regulation standards is a hard thing. So if you want to exchange material above or over sectoral rail or how it's called borders, above some sectoral borders, then you have some issues because you maybe have some different standards where you have to stick to, and sometimes it's even a parameter you have to take care of, and in a specific sector you need to take care of this parameter, and the other sector doesn't or is not interested in this parameter, and you don't have it, then it does not make sense to exchange the material data in the end, because then you have to do the physical testing again, and you don't spare time or money. So of course there are a lot of challenges for exchanging materials still, and we have to take care to think about them when we are developing such a platform.
Thank you, Anas. Thank you very much. I would like to stay on the same topic, more or less, of material exchange platform and also tracking, and jump to the other project, TULIPS, asking Anne or Karsten a bit more details about the digital product passport you mentioned before as part of the Eco-Design Directive, and also the exchange material excess exchange material platform that is present in the project.
Yes, happy to do so. And I think pretty much recognize what Tanas is also sharing in his slide and showing there, specifically also to local legislation, really norm setting also. If you look at, for instance, construction materials, and then even specifically at airports, that sometimes it sounds so easy to just put it on a platform and just reusing it, but the amount indeed of certification, warranties and approvals that is needed to actually reuse it, combined with some operational challenge as already discussed, as local storage, for instance, which is also expensive, and then the mindset change towards, hey, this might be something valuable, I'm gonna put it away and store it somewhere and make a passport for it, which all of course means that it takes more time compared to maybe what we are mostly doing today, is just putting all things in a big container and shipping it somewhere, you know. So I think that's what we want to avoid. That's what we see. Indeed, materials are getting more and more important, and by giving them a passport, they are more or less given an identity, and hence the value increases. And what we, for instance, have seen actually, and yeah, I can share the screen actually to just show you slightly how that looks like. Is that when we look at a platform that we are currently developing specifically for the airports with the excess material exchange platform, what we're seeing is that we both can host inventory for materials that are just there. We just want to know what is there, but we also offer a marketplace where products can then actually be exchanged. Also with using actually a lot of more high-tech solutions to also find proactively those matches that are needed. Of course, that is also pending on the usage of it. So it would mean that project managers or maybe even designers and architects already make use of such a platform in their design before actually procuring of materials takes place. And then, of course, if they find something that they can use, then the reuse can take place. So if you then specifically look, what we have done is we have been basically a guest during the demolition of a gate in Oslo Airport. And what we have done, we basically went with a 3D camera through that gate, and probably you know this Matterport. This is an easy way to facilitate it. And what you see is that very easily we can find here different tags that we have placed. In this case is QR codes that we have been using, and each QR code, so to say, can be linked to a passport. So if we're gonna open, in this example, a passport, which is a steel support column, the passport opens, and actually you'll see the linking with the tag. In this case, it's a passive tag. And in the passport, you can also see the movements in the passport. So this example now, also for the purpose of sharing, I removed all detailed information. But what you see is that it's quite elaborative in terms of product information that we have written down here. This is partly due to the requirements that we have already seen at the Eco Design Directive. Indeed, there is quite a lot to detail out. So I'm scrolling down a bit just so that you can get a sense out of what is needed. But apart from that, we also had a lot of exchanges with airports and indeed those people taking care of the quality certificates, warranties, in terms of actually what is needed in order to provide reuse. So what you're currently seeing is a passport kind of like in its perfect state. And in practice, it is very hard to find all the data here. I think also coming back to what Anas is saying, the data availability, even though there are systems already present, like a BIM model that easily shows a lot of details of, for instance, components. But sometimes you're looking at, or you're putting a product, a finished product on the platform, and that is then also different than a component level, which might already be there in existing BIM models at airports. So you see there are a lot of challenges to get to a full passport, and that hampers also, of course, the reuse, because for someone, if certificate or warranty part is missing, that is a red flag. Also, if we want to do the environmental impact assessment, we would need enough information to actually create a proper scoring for that. So you see, it's always in theory something that works very well, and then in practice it's always a bit harder to arrange. But it's fun to see that different stakeholders are involved in this process, and now we even get the contractors on board because they also have a lot of data, and that's, I think, also the only way when a platform like this can work.
Nice. Thank you, Anne, for the explanation. Very interesting. I think indeed, on one side, data, and on the other side, the fact that how these relatively new tools like Digital Product Passport and these kind of platforms that track material and can allow to see what is possible, create an advantage for also the stakeholders involved. I think you would like to ask a question to each other, and maybe we can start from a question that Tulips, you, Anne, or Karsten have for Anas to follow up in this discussion and go more in depth.
Yes, always good. So I'm really interested in what you've shown, Anas, and for me that was also new information. So I'm very happy to know about the existence of this project, so I can follow it more deeply. But what I also saw is that your kind of developing also an ecosystem platform. And even though the focus, of course, is on manufacturer level, I was just thinking, like, could it be, like relevant and also in that sense be enabled for airports, just also knowing that they are in a transition and knowing that with an ecosystem platform, they might know their more like the environment better, especially looking at the future? Or is this something that is not in scope?
So thank you for this really interesting question. From my feeling, so as you have seen in our slides, we are not only focusing on manufacturing processes or things like that. So it's in the end, you can change the focus of the things we are developing. If you take, for example, an airport as a manufacturing system, yeah, right? And you have some inputs, you have some outputs, you have some intralogistics, you have maybe some disturbance factors which influence your process chain in the end, or the guidance through the airport in the end. So I mean, the product the airport is producing is bringing the people into the airplanes and bring them to their destination. So in the end, of course, there are a lot of aspects where you have some similarities, where you could maybe adapt the tools we are developing, and you can, for example, use the early detection tool for some specific weather forecasts, or some traffic jams, or something like that. Uh, let's keep it like that. And then when you have an alert, of course, you can start and try to react if you, for example, close a specific gate, or bring some airport to another gate or something like that. So you have to rearrange the intralogistics in the end, to enable a balanced flow of people through the airport. And those are basically things we are doing with our products in the manufacturing system as well. So if we have a disturbance, if a machine fails or something like that, and we have to skip it, or we have to rearrange, reroute through the manufacturing system, then we are using our systems here, our tools. So basically, let's say it can be done in theory. In practical, of course, the devil is always in the detail hidden. So, but in the end, I would not say no to your question in this case.
Thank you. Very interesting. So we'll be
Do,
in touch.
do we have space for a second question, Mattia?
Of course, yes,
Uh,
please.
well, as I said before, I congratulate RaRe2 for the selection of use cases. I really think it was daring to pick sectors in which you have very high or sensitive customer needs, be it luxury goods or safety aspects, or even like consumables, which relate to our own, let's say, well-being. The question is, and I'm not sure if you can actually answer it at this stage of the project because you're fairly in the middle, but is on the inertia that the production sector usually puts up when it comes to adapting to new sort of technologies. And so, as we know, the production sectors often they have two components that they're super interested in, and one is like the product requirements to satisfy the customer needs and increase sales, and the other one is cost efficiency. So they want to offer them at affordable prices and generate profits. If you change and those along those two dimensions, they usually grow organically, if I remember correctly, and they select what is best to make profits. And it's not that they're fools. So if you suggest to them to use different materials right now, probably that would actually feel like a disturbance. Have you come to the conclusion what is the winning the winning argument to business owners to actually do say they want to change? Is there something you can say already, or will it be an individual battle over and over again?
No, of course, there will be some, or there are already some strategies established for reacting on such disturbances. But as I said, most of the reactions are gut feeling, and it's not that the decision makers have support for making such decisions. So when we are talking with other external stakeholders, it's like, okay, my CEO is a super brain and he has good luck when he makes such decisions. But of course, it can be the other way around. So not that he's not a super brain, or maybe he just have bad luck. Yeah. But of course, this is something. Um, yeah, the disturbance factors can be multiples. So it can be that you get 80%, 85% of your raw material from a specific region in the world, yeah, because the industry is settled down there. And if there is an issue we have seen it with the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal or something like that, and you have some disturbances in the global logistics, then of course this will affect your manufacturing system, and you have to react on this. And then of course it's a big effort if you can say, okay, I will overcome this shortage or this higher delivery times because then I use the recycled material which is in my region, for example, and I have a big advantage out of it in the end. And as I said, to fulfill this vision, you don't have to be isolated in your own single manufacturing system and just look what you're doing. You need to connect to suppliers, to regional suppliers, to build up a network, a big, huge network. First thing is, of course, you need to in detail know your supply chain, because this is a big problem in a lot of manufacturing companies. They know their tier one supplier, maybe their tier two supplier, but then it ends. And if you don't know where the dependencies are and where the bottlenecks are, then you're quite hindered in your flexibility. And all of those factors you have to take care of to enable the flexible reaction on disturbances, to increase the resilience of the manufacturing system, and then in the end to fulfill the customer needs. Because nobody in our fast living world, nobody wants to wait 3-4 months till they get their product. So yeah, that's basically what we are trying to produce. And as you said, we're in the first half of our project, so the platform is in the developing phase at the moment. But of course, we will try to demonstrate this on our use case partners, and then try to convince others to participate in such developments as well, and to take advantage out of the knowledge gained.
Anas, before closing, would you also like to ask a question to Anne or Karsten?
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in. So I totally like your approach of the circularity aspect on the airports and the material passports and things like that. And as you just have seen, we are talking about recycled materials as well and things like that. And I'm pretty interested into the material flow through the airport. If you are planning to have some standards for materials, or if you want to have the shops like using just one type of plastics that you can easily recyclate them, and how is it planned to handle the high amount of different materials and to decrease the complexity of reusing them in the end.
Very interesting question. And I think also to be answered on different levels, looking at operational or construction streams. Because only if you're looking at, for instance, plastics at operational streams, you see that the simple thing, actually like moving away from the single-use coffee cups, is considered quite a complex task, because you have different entities, or not operational, let's say entities acting at the terminal, thinking about Starbucks that is there, but also other brands that would like to, of course, promote their own logo on the cups, and that's part, of course, of what they say, the passenger experience, like being at an airport with your Starbucks coffee, for instance, right? So partly it comes back to the contracts actually that have been defined with each and every one of the tenders. So actually procurement plays a big role in kind of like looking at, hey, what kind of room do we have to enforce certain material usages, for instance. But on the other hand, and this is what we have found, is that there is a huge commitment from all these tenants and stakeholders at airports, because everyone has their own sustainability or circularity plan at hand. They want to move in a certain direction. So it's a matter of bringing them together and also, well, co-creating kind of like a solution for them that works at airports. And by the way, if it works at airports, it can work at train stations, or it can work at harbors, or there are many different kind of like similar systems where these type of things can work. So that's also very interesting. If you look at construction sites, also here what you see is there are many different stakeholders involved. Looking at, of course, depending on the size of the airport, but looking, for instance, at Schiphol Airport, what we see is there are a lot of different contractors there that, of course, have their own also procurement teams there. So it really depends here on a stakeholder approach, having everyone kind of like committing to a pilot now, so that everyone can see the benefits and also downsides of working like this. Because also what you see here is there are different contracts set up on who has the mandate kind of like to choose for what kind of materials. And I think what is changing, if I look at more overall at the field of circularity, changing from 10 years ago, or even maybe 5 years ago, you see that there is a lot more knowledge about it and a lot more commitment actually to at least try it and see if it works. And I think there it really helps to be in also a program like TULIPS, because of course then part of it is financed, which of course helps in terms of trying out new things, but also showing them the potential of what it could look like in the future. And yeah, that's very promising.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Yes, I want to say also we have to close because it's 12:10. Well, we started a bit later, so I think it was worth it to go a little bit out of time and ending the discussion, because it was really interesting, and I hope it could also be inspiring for you, for each other, your projects, and maybe open space for future, who knows, collaboration or something else. Thank you very much again. I will close this session of Loops, and yeah, we will see next time with the next episode, probably in September. And with you, Karsten, Anne, and Anas, we will keep in touch and stay connected. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Goodbye.